seated. Roll call, please.
Weeks.
Here.
Thomas. Nipko.
Here.
Christensen. Here. McDaniel.
Present.
Raver.
Here.
Zumwalt. Clark.
Here. First on the agenda is approval of minutes from the August 9th regular meeting, August 9th special meeting, and August 29th special meeting.
Approve all of them in one motion.
Motion by Raver to second
Yeah,
minutes.
we approve all of them in one motion.
Yes. Second by Larkin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Petitions and communications. Mr. Bauer is here, and you're first on the agenda.
Okay.
Come on up to the table, and or you're welcome to stand. Okay, Mr. Bauer is here to address the council in relation to the ordinances that need to be changed, things at the state level that will affect us here at the local level. The floor is yours.
What's going on with the ordinances as proposed is, in light of Ferguson, the state legislature has taken a severe look at municipal courts across the state. While none of the cases I'm aware of are pending here, at least on the east side of the state, they've had a whole lot of problems. So last year they passed Senate Bill number 5, which basically for minor traffic violations is defined, reduce the total amount of fines and costs that could be charged for any offense that resulted in 4 or more points against your driver's license. They reduced it last year to a total of $300 plus court costs. Moving forward this year, the legislature in Senate Bill 572 reduced the amount of fines for minor traffic violations to a total of court costs and fines of $225, and have set up a stepping provision for municipal ordinances, where before historically in all jurisdictions it was a straight $500 fine or 90 days in jail. That generally that was imposed. But what this ordinance does is bring the local ordinances in compliance with the state statute as it exists. So it's something that whether the ordinance pushes through on its face, there could be issues with challenges to our ordinances. Having been the prosecutor over a year now, the majority of costs and fines that we invoke actually fall into this guideline anyway. Where it's potentially has some issues is where historically with some of the other offenses where we had more room to say plea bargain. If you get a speeding ticket as a standard in the state of Missouri, a lot of times if you talk to the prosecutor, it'll be found down to a defective equipment type thing. And for that exchange, many times the value of the fine goes up as part of the process, because you don't get points on your license. So you pay on the front end and not at the back end. So from an attorney point of view, it kind of works pretty well. By limiting this, they've kind of limited that power, because now say something that would have, and I'm going to fall back on Carl to keep it out of anything that I'm currently dealing with. Let's just say that historically that was something that would be amended to a lower motor vehicle charge or an ordinance, and it would be a $500 fine or 2 $500 fines. Well, now we don't have that ability because we're now capped. So I can't have somebody get something reduced to it from whatever the case may be to a defective equipment and charge the higher fee. So that's all this does, is it actually bring the ordinances in line, like I said, with state statute. And the situation that we're in with the municipal courts. And it will help our judge is Judge Dotson, who is a stickler for crossing T's and dotting I's. So by passing this, it'll actually serve us. In discussing it with the city attorney, we did leave the general provision so that if this gets tweaked in the future, we still have the general provision subject to the definitions that they've given us. I don't, in my reading of it in the ordinance, see anything that falls outside these definitions just yet. But in case something does, we're still covered. That's why it's set up as a tier. Say, for example, on the minor motor vehicle situations, general caveat that for an ordinance violation, it reads the same way the old ordinance did, fine up to $500 or 90 days in jail. Then these are the exceptions as have been carved out by the legislature, which I believe are pretty inclusive, just from a practical perspective. But it's still in those cases that may fall outside their definition, doesn't limit us so much either. The other thing that the ordinance does do in practical effect is does take away our court's availability to incarcerate. That has now become very limited. It's not an automatic, hey, pay a fine and go to jail. That can result in incarceration have to be alcohol or drug related, injury to a person, providing false information to the police. All those kind of things that you wouldn't want to take as a defense attorney when I do it, as a plea bargain, just as a kind of thing. So again, that whole pre-trial situation, it's changing, it's a new climate, and we will work with it. Is this one into effect August 28th? Our first court date where we will be dealing within these rules will be the upcoming one. But I can say, from both historically and the fines I've had imposed, the majority of the time it's not really hurting us a whole lot. The big catch with, I'm sure everybody's read in the press, part of the legislature's look is that they're trying to keep the municipal court from completely feeding the budget. There are some new requirements under the amendments is proposed and slightly lower percentages on how much of the budget can actually come out of the municipal courts as a result of various things. But these particular two ordinances, like I said, deal with the structure that we're now working in and what's been mandated by statute. Anybody have any questions?
We don't really have any alternative.
No, the legislation is pretty clear. And the language of the ordinance mirrors the statute. So in talking with the city attorney, the whole idea behind doing this is, could we have left the ordinance alone in theory and applied it as listed by statute? Sure. The problem you run into from an appellate perspective is that our ordinances would be improper under state law in their face. So even though the application would be correct, the ordinance wouldn't align themselves with state statute without making these changes. So short answer to your question is that at this point in time, we really don't have any alternative but to at least put this language in the ordinances as they relate to the municipal court.
Any other questions from Mr. Bauer? As he's pointed out, he and the city attorney reviewed the two ordinances that are on the agenda later, and they meet the statute requirements.
So just for instance, our, say, tall grass and weeds, is that $25 fine? Is that currently what the fine is now?
That's generally what runs through the city hall. That's handled long before it gets to me. By the time they get to me, there are usually multiple occurrences, and that will differ depending on the case and what's gone on.
I'll go off base just a little. So my opinion is that fine should be a little stiffer. Do we have room for wiggle room to get it a little higher?
Well, per the new ordinance, we have, there's, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't handle this part of the equation, there's a fee schedule that folks can pay at City Hall still. So I have no control over where that goes. By the time I see it in court, we're just theoretically, at least per the old ordinances, for that tall grass and weeds, you can pay up to a $500 fine or 90 days in jail, which I don't see our judge necessarily doing. The grass. It has to be really tall and be a health issue, and still don't see it. Under the new ordinance, I believe that the first time in 12 months is $250. The maximum is $250. So yes, in the courthouse, I have more room than just what the pay at the window is.
One of the problems I had personally with the other with Carl was he was, I mean, we take the time to write a ticket for tall grass because, you know, obviously it needs mowed, and then there would be 3 or 4 issues, and he combined them all, and they would pay the fine and still not mow the grass. And I still got 3 people squabbling because the grass isn't cut, and finally we just said the street department would cut it. And I don't know if that's going to, I understand it comes to City Hall, but it's just, I don't understand the process of that, why. I got a tall grass release ticket in Harrisonville and it cost me $300. So it encourages me to mow the yard.
Okay. And this is the question that you're asking as to what somebody else did in my position. It's way beyond.
Well, I know, but I'm just.
The topic is, and I won't comment on pending cases.
But I have to go to court for it, so why is that different from here? Because it was still a city ordinance, and I still have to go in front of the judge to do it. Why do we have to go to City Hall and pay that?
Because I believe
They chose to do that.
there's a building structure in the ordinance that what ends up happening is you have the availability to pay the fine. It's a nominal fine, and I don't deal with that
They say court cost.
here. And then once that doesn't take place, then the ticket ultimately comes to me, I sign off, and then I deal with it in the courthouse. I do accept in my short time in office that one of the big issues that people have seen is weighing the balance, checks and balances of, well, if I got 4 tickets here, it would have cost me $100. Now I get 4 tickets here, and at least the complaint being that, okay, now somebody knocks them down to 2 tickets and you pay $75 and walk away. I've been advised of that by my police chief, so I can pay attention to that when I'm negotiating a settlement or a fine.
Because the only part of this is it's just irritating, you know, it costs the city money to write the ticket. And then when you've got 4 tickets issued and you're not, you know, I've been to court a couple times and watched it happen, you knock 3 tickets out of the whole scenario. Well, there's 1 ticket that they're paying doesn't even pay for the 3 or 4 we wrote.
The catch that you have on a fine basis is we have to, any appeal that's offered has to be approved by a judge. And while we have maximum amounts, currently now your first offense in a 12-month period would be a $250 fine is the max. If a case is tried, the judge can order whatever she wants. So now you put yourself in a perspective carrying one step further, where now you have trial running longer, the potential for a trial de novo, which theoretically, if somebody wanted to do this on dance, would result in a jury trial. So there's part of that balancing, if you will, that takes place at a pretrial settlement, that in my opinion should be done on a case-by-case basis. So it's going to be really hard for me to give you just a general overview, other than the fact that the chief of police has raised those concerns. And generally, before any offer in those situations are made, I have spoken to him and our enforcement officer to get some background on the situation. So at least I don't believe that I've done that since my tenure. And I have been made conscious of it. You know, that particular issue, hey, we write 15 tickets, and I'm purposely exaggerating because I'm not basing it on fact or criticizing my predecessor. But we write 15 tickets and it gets knocked down to 1, and the fine is less than what they could have paid for the 15 in City Hall. So I do accept that premise, and it is currently in the background and looked at when the cases come across my desk and are reviewed in court.
Well, I know they've said that they enjoy working with you, and so that was a good recommendation from them. But I was just curious, you know, I had to hear his Daniel, so I figured I'd ask.
No, that's fine. Again, I can't overtly speak as to what took place before. I can assure you that those situations have been addressed, discussed with local law enforcement, and that is taken into consideration before an offer is made in court. The other catch we do have too, and I do have to put this out there, is our municipal courts can no longer incarcerate someone who is indigent. So if I make a recommendation on fine and they claim they can't pay, other resources have to be made available for the new, whether that be community service or some other alternative. The legislature has made it pretty clear that I just can't look and say, hey, $100 in 3 days. Especially if that person brings out the fact that they can't pay the fine. So we're in a new, somewhat uncharted, still working out the kinks, if you will. And I have my own personal opinion as to the change that I would venture on, but I don't think, at least in our court, they were necessary, but we are obligated to comply with the state statute. Anything, anybody else?
Appreciate your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Community or any other comments from public? Anyone care to speak to the council? Seeing none. Community organization update. Anyone from any of the community groups? groups that would like to address the council? Old business? None? New business? Probably, maybe this would be a good place for the park board to address the council.
Okay. So Sharon gave you the sheets. This is kind of what we discussed Thursday when you all came to the board meeting, which we appreciate you being there. It opened up some good dialogue, and we kind of cleared up some issues. These numbers are tentative, and everything is based on the $128,000 annual revenue amount before any stormwater management would be deducted. So this is my way of trying to spread out the money as far as it can go in multiple areas. So we focus on the city park. Like we said, we make the playground more ADA compliant with the new service, the canopies, new playground equipment. Then the maintenance as far as mowing, paints, and other landscaping at the park. In addition, in the first year, we'd also like to start some trail development, which was discussed in the comprehensive plan at the board meeting Thursday. We'd also like to improve the volleyball and basketball courts. We want to work towards purchasing the 20 acres south of the park. The price we think right now is a little bit high, and we would work in negotiations to find a price that we seem or think is more fair, but that's something that we want to do and eventually develop that and have more green space and possibly more facilities in the future. We want to spend more money at the city lake. I've spoken with multiple people in the community, and that's a common comment, is that people want to see more done at the city lake as far as programs, and improved facilities, possible trails. Anyway, so in the first year, this is all, or 10% would go to the city lake, and then 5% would go to the recreation programs that are not offered yet, and that would those would have to be created. That's just the first year. I mean, you all can see the other 2 years. If you need, I can go through them if you want, but you have it in front of you. Do you have any questions for me?
Comments?
There's no percentage for your stormwater on there.
Correct, because I have no idea. You asked what I thought the park board could use, and this is what I think the park board could use. If you guys think that stormwater should be part of this, then that's your decision, but my perspective, I would like all of the $128,000.
I thought originally that stormwater was one of the issues. It is.
The way the statute is written at the state level is it is Parks and Recreation and Stormwater Management tax. So when you put it on the ballot, that's how it will be written. As far as how it's divided is up to the city council. It could be 100% and 0%. It could be 95 and 5. It could be whatever you deem necessary. But on the ballot, it has to say Stormwater Management and Parks and Recreation.
This is just your recommendation?
Yes, yeah, this is not even close to set in stone. This is just what I looked at. You said it gives you some percentages, and I want to stretch the money as far as possible, and it's easier to do that when you have more of it. So those are my thoughts.
Is this part of that comprehensive plan that you discussed the other night?
Yes,
Are
so
these percentages in line with that plan?
the percentages are not necessarily because there's not percentages in the plan,
Okay.
but it covers topics that were covered in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Such as improving the city park and trails and the playground and all those. Those are all in the comprehensive plan.
3 councils ago, the council entered into an agreement with the Department of Conservation. A 25-year agreement. That 25-year agreement would be a situation where there would be lake improvements. The lake improvements would be a 25-75 match.
Okay.
So the council has agreed to, with the conservation, some pending improvements that are in the conservation budget for this year. And we are just waiting for the go-ahead from the state conservation people to start that movement to get that accomplished. Those improvements were a handicap covered fishing dock, a new restroom by the shelter house, and those rough costs were around $84,000, $85,000. of which the council has set aside a 25% match in cash, but we don't think it's going to need 25% match in cash because we can donate labor, time, effort, and so forth. So when we say improving facilities at the lake, there are things already in progress that are major.
That's perfect. So those issues are kind of being addressed already. That means we could take that money and maybe put it elsewhere if those if the needs are being met. I was unaware of that, which kind of changed the numbers a little bit, but I mean, that's great. I don't. If we don't have to spend money on it with this, and it's already being taken care of, I mean, that's great news. So.
Right. Okay. I just point that out for information to
Yeah, I was not aware.
New council and whoever needs to hear that. Okay. I might also add that the lake really is managed by the city now, and I'm hesitant to let it drift away to a park board because the city does the maintenance, the upkeep, the mowing, the painting, whatever's needed out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the city has voluntarily entered into that agreement because we took over the lake from the Board of Public Works 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the consensus of the council, if I recall right, by majority vote, or by unanimous vote, but I'd have to check that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very popular, with opposition I might add, to do that. But we got there, and the compliments and the public input to City Hall, and I'm sure some council members, is very positive now that the city took it over. We hear compliments every day when they stop by to buy a fishing permit, to get more information on the lake. They tell us how great it's managed. Our street department does a super job.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of visitors out there from far and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and in no means am I trying to talk down what the status of the lake is right now, or try and take over the lake. The city, or the Board of Parks and Recreation, falls under the city, so we're all part of the same team. So with this money, if we work to improve facilities in addition to what's already being done, it benefits everybody. I mean, we're not trying to take it over or...
right, and I wasn't the city.
So the city can continue to manage it as it is, but we'd also like to do more because money's tight for everybody, and sometimes you may want to do things and you just can't because the money's not there. So that's kind of what the idea is, of putting the money, part of the money towards that.
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm all for trails and all that type of stuff, but I'm questioning at this point in our discussion, and it's an open discussion, that people are going to drive 2.5 miles when we have some trails here in Holden.
Sure, and the trails, so there's the 10% for the city lake, and then a 10%, well, in the second year, there's 15% that goes to trails. So there's $19,000 approximately that would go to trails in the second year. And that can be within city limits, and eventually maybe connecting a trail from the trails inside city limits to the city lake. And that's a long-term project, obviously, and will cost a substantial amount of money, I'm sure. But we definitely want to develop trails inside city limits. And when I was saying, talking about the city lake and developing trails and other facilities, the money that goes towards the city lake, that's how those trails would be bought, is with that money, not the additional trail money. Those are kind of separate. So when I look at improvements to the city lake, and I put 10%, so $13,000 approximately a year, part of that money would go towards developing trails.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
This isn't the final plan.
No. Not even close. So this is, we spoke Thursday at the board meeting that the public and the council would like to see more percentage numbers, kind of have an idea of how the money would be spent. But in no way is this written in stone. This is very fluid and can change as we progress with the cell sites in the future. First thing that has to happen is it has to be approved to be put on the ballot.
In order for it to be on the ballot, the council has to approve that plan, isn't that right?
That's true. Well, the park board needs to approve it
Yeah, but
first.
I mean-
They haven't even vetted it yet.
Before it goes on the ballot, though, we have to approve it. We're the ones that says whether it goes on the ballot.
We're the ones that put it on the ballot
Yes.
in January.
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted is I asked them to make sure we had percentages, because we're gonna get asked where they're gonna use the money and how they're gonna use money. And what they recommended us, percentages. And that was basically all they're giving us now is, this is where they think they want to use the money. We have the ultimate goal of actually changing that figure where we think it needs.
In order for it to go on the April ballot, I think, and you might know more about it than I do, it has to be presented no later than the middle of February, I think.
That's January.
It's January.
It's 19th or 20th.
So we're getting close to getting out of time.
No, we have plenty of time.
We
We
have
have
time.
October, November, December, and January.
And we should probably get a hold of this to have a while to, in session or whatever, to go over this, so that everybody understands exactly what's involved.
From our perspective, we're currently developing a master plan, but from our perspective, we don't, it sounds kind of negative, but we don't want to waste our time if it's not even going to get put on the ballot. You know, because the master plan is very, very time consuming. It takes a lot of people getting together to work out the details, the council, the board, local organizations, etc., to figure out how this is going to work and what people are looking for. And we don't want to put in the many hours if the council is going to just say we don't want to do it.
But I think what the council needs to consider is, if they come up with a plan that we approve, we'll put it on the ballot, basically. And,
Correct.
I mean, either we will or we won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question for the council is there a need for improved parks and recreation? To me, if the answer is yes, which to me the answer is yes, we currently can't do it with how much money we have a year. You can't do it with $12,000 a year. We want to improve the community. The community wants to see the community improve. You know, the citizens of Holden want to see Holden improve. And without money, I mean, through a sales tax or some other means, but right now sales tax is the option that raises the most money. That's how we're going to improve the city, and that's how we're going to improve parks and recreation.
I'll put them here. I was talking to Sherry about this earlier today. You know, we were looking at buying another rental house here in town. We looked at 5 or 6 different houses up for sale, and when it come time to buy them, they already sold. I mean, we got houses selling. There's new people moving into town. So, I mean, we actually have more people coming here. And so we need to do something. We need to improve it. We need, our stormwater, we need to address it. We need a better park. We need walking trail, something to keep the families here. They may have bought here because the houses were cheap, but we need a reason to keep them.
Right, you're exactly right.
Well, I think this is an excellent start. It tells you, by year, where you're going to put the majority of the money and giving us some ideas about how much of the money that you receive will go where. And that's a good first start. And I think we can work with that. Whether you get 100% or whether you get 50% or somewhere between the two, who knows?
Sure. Well, and my recommendation is for these numbers is that we get 100%. I understand if you don't give us the 100%, but I would love it if you did.
Yeah, I understand.
Anything else? All
I
right.
echo what Doyle just said, that we do have new people move to town. We have people that want to move to town. Our problem here is, one of them, that's been addressed at least 2 years ago, is accessible and adequate housing. Now, I had a developer come to City Hall 2 weeks ago now, and tell me that he would like to develop land in the city limits for housing. But he said the quotes that he got on services sewer, water made it prohibitive. You know, maybe in this package, in this movement, we need to be talking with the Board of Public Works about the cost of putting in water and sewer. He got discouraged and walked away because the figures that were thrown to him were not, they weren't even considered, he wasn't able to consider them. So that concerns me that we all talk about business development, now housing development, and we can't afford to make it reasonable for utilities to be put in for development. So are we shooting ourselves in the foot, wanting a sales tax? You know, the comprehensive plan was written in 2010. It also projected that the population of Holden would be 2,600. What is our population today? 2,210, give or take. So we're going the opposite direction. To me, we need to be working toward progressing to get it to 2,600, not accepting the 2,200, and it may go lower. You know, our schools losing enrollment, our town is losing enrollment, and we're talking about not being able to afford infrastructure at a reasonable cost to people that would like to come in and develop.
And that's a very good point. I don't know if that's really my area of expertise. I know it's not my area.
Right, and I'm not expecting you to address it, but I think it goes hand in hand.
Yes, so parks and recreation, I do know, and I don't have a percentage on it, but if you live closer to a park, your property value increases if it's a nice park. If you live close to a trail, your property value increases. So that's one way to increase property values, but it also keeps people in the community, as Mr. Weeks said, and it sometimes brings people in. I think we have a great school district. Yes, I'm a little bit biased because I work there, but I think we have a great school district, and I think we have some things that bring people in, but I know our park system right now is not great. It's not going to keep anybody. If anything, it's going to deter people.
Yeah. Well, if we have people knocking at the door that want to come in and develop properties, subdivision, whatever, and the first people they see are our board of utilities out here, and they get discouraged, they're walking away, and that bothers me. They're coming to City Hall wondering why we can't do something. And I say, well, you know, it's been that way. We've seen it for years. You're telling me it's still that way? I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I won't speak to that, but as far as parks goes, this is how we improve it.
You've been a pretty good ambassador between organizations around here, and you've got people to come to the plate and talk to you. Maybe just a suggestion, you sit down with them and have a casual conversation with the concern we have, or what the mayor's just addressed, and how you're moving, and to see if they'll willing to jump on board and work with you a little bit also.
Regarding,
as far as, you never know whether they got to offer too. They may be able to assist in something, as in like the cost of utility, the cost of infrastructure to knock it down to get something. I mean, it all goes hand in hand from one piece to the other.
The challenge for me, and I've spoken with the local organization, I'd like to be on board for this. I don't know if I can definitely speak with them and relay the concerns about infrastructure and utilities, but I don't know if I'll sit down with them and ask them to give money to improve infrastructure.
We're not asking for money, we're just asking for support. So if there's another developer that wants to come in and do what he wanted to do, I mean, you're doing being a good ambassador based on getting there. You can bring people to the table to talk to you.
In a completely different issue, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
You can roll that with this, not necessarily adding money to it, but getting them to come to the plate and say, hey, this is the project we're working on. We have someone interested in doing this, what can you do?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, as far as that goes, it does go hand in hand, where we want to see the community improve. It's either through parks or through infrastructure or through whatever. So bringing everybody to the same table, sitting down and getting support to improve the issues or improve the problems, that's definitely a possibility.
So I guess the next step in this would be for this proposal to go back to the board, to the park board, and they would vet it, they would discuss it, they would fine tune it, and bring it back to the council.
I can do that.
I mean, because right up to this point, this is your.
This is mine,
proposal.
yeah.
So
Since
I think
Thursday.
the park board needs to have a stamp of approval on it
Okay.
before the council gives serious consideration to it.
Okay, and I definitely will take it to the board and we will edit it how would be necessary or they deem necessary. But it's still a living document, and it's still, we could bring it to the council next month as we see now, and maybe something changes and it changes. So I don't know if I understand having a master plan is very important. The community wants to know how the money's going to be spent, but it's also important to understand that this is a living document, and just because we approve it this month doesn't mean it's not going to change in ways in the future.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, liquor consumptions, Billy Hoover, wedding reception on October 22nd from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. Do I have a motion to approve that activity? Motion by Weeks. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda, appointment of Karen Christensen to Park Board, Zoning Board, Merit Board, and as Council Liaison. She filled the position of a council person that resigned, and so she is stepping into his roles that he had prior to his resignation. Do I have a motion to approve that appointment?
I make that motion.
Motion by Clarkin,
Second.
second by Weeks.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
council liaison to all of the boards or specific boards he's liaison to.
Well, council liaison to those three.
Those three, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Under Mayor's comments, I received a courtesy call today from the State Ethics Commission representative informing me the ethics violation complaint that had been filed against me by Ward 2 Council Member Jim Nipko has been dismissed, and I will be issuing a written statement upon receiving written confirmation of the dismissal, which is expected to be received later this week. That's all I have. Under appropriations, any questions on the appropriations? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Clarkin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rager. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Under ordinances and resolutions, we have bill number 802-17, an ordinance of the City of Holden, Missouri, amending Chapter 54, business licenses relating to provisions for issuing business licenses to businesses, trades, and entities doing business within Holden city limits. Final reading. Any discussion?
motion we approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by Nipko to approve, second by Christensen. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Weeks,
Yeah.
Nipko,
Yep.
Christensen,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Raver,
Yes.
Zumwalt,
No.
Parker.
Yes.
Motion carried. Bill number 080317, an ordinance amending section 34.010 of chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Holden relating to name change from Park Board to Board of Parks and Recreation. Final reading. Any discussion?
Make a motion we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Weeks. Roll call, please.
Weeks,
Yes.
Nipko,
Yep.
Christensen,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Raver, Zumwalt,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item C, bill number 090417, an ordinance amending chapter 11, definition and rules of construction of the Code of Ordinances. This will be first reading. Attorney Bowers gave a presentation. I had a chance to answer questions. Any other comments before we entertain a motion? Okay, the floor is open for a motion to approve 090417.
I make a motion that we approve Bill 090417.
Motion by Daniel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rachel. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item D, bill number 090517, an ordinance amending chapter 13 regarding general penalty provisions of the Code of Ordinances. First reading. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Christensen,
I second that motion.
second by Daniel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Reports of committees and all other business. Councilman Weeks.
Yeah. I spoke with the police department, not anything in particular, but a few going on there. I bought public works, got some packets. I discussed earlier with, Katie Blair, chairman of DPW, we got a lot of rain Friday. I got voices on our rain gauge, and there was a lot of flooding and a lot of water going through the sewer system. They call it a water main break on Lexington, so I just figured, I'll go look at it, and it was actually a sewer main, but it was, so, I mean, one of my big prerogatives is we need to do something with stormwater, because it's going in all directions here, but, yeah, that's all I got.
Is the town getting flatter, or are we just getting more rain?
I think we got a lot of rain too fast.
You're the liaison to the Board of Public Works, on the sheet that they pass out at their meetings, it's got water accountabilities July 5th, 16 through 8/5/16, and 73%. That means that 27% is not accounted for. Has there ever been a discussion at the Board of Public Works that you've heard why that number's not 90, 100?
I know we talked about it a little bit. They did a water flushes, or they did a big water flush here not too long ago. And then another part of it is the fire department's been doing a lot of training at the water tower, so they've been using a lot of water there. And there's really no way to account for that part of it. But I will take that concern to them and ask them and report back next week.
Well, just to clarify that percent, it's been consistently high 60s, low 70s. It very seldom gets above 75. And it's consistently, and when I say consistent, for over a year, I've been watching that number, and I thought, you know, is that much water being given away, lost, people not paying their bills? I'm just curious. So if you would, get a little more detail on that at their next meeting. Thank you. Councilman Nipko.
Nothing.
Karen, you haven't been on a committee yet, so you didn't have anything to do.
I was at the park.
But you'll be there. Yeah, it's true. Larry?
Don't have anything.
Sam?
I don't have anything this time.
Jim?
The only thing I would have, after looking through the ordinances, researching some of the information that dealt with our council packet over the last couple of months, is I came across an ordinance and it talks to the publishing of our finances twice a year. I don't know if that's being done, but I think the ordinance says it's supposed to be published in the local newspaper. So I would ask Sharon if that's being done, it's a non-issue, but if it's not, we might want to do that.
We publish the auditor's report in the paper, public paper, annually, so the public does know the status, financial status of the city. So I think it's being done at that level. I'll review the ordinance. Is there anything else you're aware of, Sharon? I think that's just been a matter of common practice to do the audit.
It says twice a year, maybe we need to consider whether we need it twice a year, not change the ordinance.
Well, we audit it once a year, so, you know. And obviously, the financial information of the city is public information. If anybody wants to walk in, it can be shared on the spot.
Do we think we'll ever get to a place where we'll be able to put our minutes on the city's website along with our monthly financial statements? We had talked about that probably a year ago, and that was what our goal was to work towards. And like whenever we make corrections to the minutes, we don't get another minutes reissued to us with the corrections, but if we were to have them posted on the city's website, we could see that these are the official amended, corrected minutes that we need.
Well, the minutes that are put on the city website are the corrected minutes. We meet tonight, if we amend them tonight, what we did tonight, no amendments, so that's what will go on the website. This meeting will be approved next month, and then it'll go on. So only approved minutes are put on the website.
Well, for an example, we had our minutes posted on our Facebook page, City of Holden's Facebook page, and we took all those minutes off. And as far as I know, unless you just recently posted them to the city's website, they didn't get reposted back on the city's website. I mean, it's old news, but it's still, if somebody wants to go back and research an issue, they can.
I'll clarify that on that website. It's kind of hard to get into it and work with it. And I know a lot of them, I watch Sharon
Sure.
days having issues trying to get into it.
So that's the advantage of having a website over a Facebook page. Absolutely, I agree with
It
you.
was a website that she was having problems getting onto, and I know the fire department was expressed concern over getting on the website too and working, so it's not really, I guess, user-friendly yet. So maybe we need to come back in and go back through things again. That was yours. You can add any more to that or not?
I'm sorry,
The website.
the website. Well, we have a consultant that comes and updates it when we feel it's necessary to be updated. We had hoped to make it so that we, meaning fire, police, city, could go in and do their own thing, but it's not working out that way. So we may have to look at a different direction again with a different consultant. We thought we were going that way and it just didn't come to be, so that's still under scrutiny. Anything else?
That's all I have, thank you.
All right. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Draper, second by Weeks. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.